Very good. So I don't know how many people are now in the presentation. I don't see any of you. I would have liked to ask you the question, how much, yeah, what people went through the African rainforest once in their life. And the reason why I would ask that is that it's a very weird experience. So people that have experienced like camping in the forest, for instance, it's a bit different, right? You have like all these weird sounds from the forest, and you hear the birds and the animals, and it's so different than in the city. And if you've never been to Africa before, I can recommend it really. So my name is Tim. I'm an engineer by nature. So I've been developing software probably since I was a kid. And for the majority of my career, I was developing Java software. So I work at a company called Q42. And within that company, I run my own department. And that department is called Hack the Planet. But before I was running Hack the Planet and before I was working at Q42, I was developing software, developing Java applications. So, for instance, I worked at NATO, I worked at Royal Dutch Airlines, I worked with many bigger organizations, developing software. Like you're probably familiar with like the Java framework, Spring, Hibernate, Maven, the whole thing. So at Q42, we're located in the Netherlands. You probably hear from my accent. And at Q42, we do all sorts of projects. So basically, we do a lot of commercial projects. We work, for instance, like for Adidas, for ASA. So actually, very cool clients and very cool projects. Within Q42, I have this own department. And why I have this own department and how that came to be, I will tell you in a couple of minutes. But first, let me start with a little story about that experience that I just talked about, being in a forest and having all these really weird forest noises, because it's still on top of my mind. And I actually just came back like 2 months ago. I was in a Gabon forest. So imagine, I just told you that I'm an engineer, and I was really remote, in the most remote place ever in my life, in the forest. And then at 3 o'clock, I woke up and we heard elephant noises and we heard monkey noises. But also, what was out of the ordinary with all these crazy noises was like WhatsApp notifications. So some things that you would normally consider normal in your daily lives, you hear notifications all the time. It's really weird to hear these kinds of notifications in the middle of the night at 3 o'clock. So, but I hear them, and I woke up, and I was like, who has his phone on at night at 3 o'clock in the middle of the night? I mean, why? And I couldn't sleep after that. So me and my team, we woke up the next morning. We sat on the porch in Gabon still, and we drank some coffee. And one of our colleagues just came back and said, "Wow, did you hear that? Did you hear the notifications?" And we were like, "Damn, of course we heard them. I mean, were they from your phone? I mean, why would you get the notifications?" And he said, "Yeah, it's from the elephants. It's from the cameras." And then we were like, "Oh, of course, it's from our cameras, because the day before that, we deployed smart cameras that can send messages, can send WhatsApp notifications to phones. In this case, the phone from my colleague." So let me dive directly into what we've been doing, because now you're thinking, smart camera trap notifications. What's this guy talking about? And again, in a minute, I will tell you how this all came to be. But first, I want to, get to the more important part, is that what we've been developing. So, so my team has been working for a couple of years to modify, to create a new type of camera that can be used in conservation. So let me start with the camera trap first. This, I hope you can see it, is a camera trap that's been used in conservation by many different parties, by rangers, for protecting wildlife, to know what's going on. These things make photos and they store it on an SD card inside. But what they can't do, and this presentation is way too short to explain everything in conservation and all the technology involved, but these cameras, they take pictures on an SD card and they're just sitting there. So even if you're in a really remote place, you have to go back to the camera and retrieve the images. And often, there often is not enough coverage for like Wi-Fi, cell phone. So these things are just sitting there. So they couldn't be used like proactively. So for instance, if you want to know if elephants are nearby villages or if poachers are in a forest, these are not very useful. So what we did is we modified these cameras. So basically I can show you, we opened them up. So, and again, these ones you can just simply buy anywhere in the store. We opened them up and then you'll see like the inside. And then we added our own technology, our own chip. Basically what it does, I can tell you in a nutshell, and you'll probably understand it in a minute, is that this, once it takes a picture, and I'm sure like fellow engineers will probably know where I'm going to, when this camera takes a picture, it will send a LoRa notification to one of the other boxes that we've developed, this one. It'll send a notification and it basically says, I have something for you. And this box will turn on. This is a box that you can deploy nearby this camera, like high up in a tree. This box turns on. There's a Raspberry Pi compute in there with a lot of extra technology. So there's a Raspberry Pi compute in there. It will turn on. It will get the photo, and with the use of machine learning, it will detect what's on the photo. So again, not enough time to explain every little detail about how this is working, but we developed the whole thing, and it uses machine learning to classify basically what's on the photo. So we can distinguish rhinos, elephants, and humans, and even we can now distinguish between humans like walking around doing nothing or humans carrying guns, for instance. Then we can classify them as possible poachers. So in a nutshell, this camera trap, this little box sitting in the forest, this whole thing is solar powered. That's that's the one thing that we deployed, and so this was like a project that we were doing to help out in conservation. And now you're probably, and I hope you're asking yourself this question. Okay, so we have this Java engineer who's been working on projects his whole life, and now he's like deploying smart camera traps in Gabon forest. So how did I get to that forest? So in 2016, and you probably are familiar with the things like with hackathons. So we organize a hackathon every year, and in 2016 I had the idea. Well, there are so many global challenges everywhere, right? I mean, you have to open up the newspaper, or you look at the news, and you see everything: global warming, poaching, etc., etc. So there are so many things that require energy, or require innovative solutions. And I was thinking at the time, how can I help? How can I contribute to these things? It was also the time when I became father. So obviously, maybe people in the room there recognize it, that as soon as that happens, you're not responsible for your own little self anymore, right? You really get the feeling like, okay, I have another responsibility. And after I'm gone, like hopefully it's going to take a long time, but after that happens, there's life that needs to go on, right? Your life that you created, basically. So it sounds a little bit dramatic, but I really felt it this way. And I was thinking, well, I mean, take something like global warming, like the water that raises. I mean, we're in the Netherlands, right? We are like in a sink, basically. So if that happens, then it's going to be really problematic. So I started to get in contact with parties like Greenpeace. So if you know, in my head, they were like the tough people. They were climbing buildings, and you know, they were fighting for a good cause. And I asked them, you know, what can we do? Can we help you? And we actually could. They said, well, we're doing a project in Indonesia, and there's a lot of problems with forest fires going on, and well, let's see if we can do something about it. So together with the team from Greenpeace Indonesia, we developed an autonomous flying drone that could fly for an hour and a half and create all sorts of data, video, air pressure, and now even now it's still cool. But in 2016 it was even cooler to have something pull it off. And what's funny is that we really made it affordable. So basically, what we did is we bought a drone from AliExpress, the most cheapest one we could actually find, and hooked them up with a Raspberry Pi and autopilots, GPS, stuff like that. And you know, basically get this one question down: is that okay? How can we get video data? How can we get, you know, eyes in the sky on an efficient way? Um, and you know, that really set a lot of stuff in motion for me, because we actually went to Indonesia and we worked with the team there. And what I saw was that, you know, like a couple of crazy nerds that we are, we came up with this idea. We developed this solution. We bought an AliExpress drone and we just hooked stuff together. Like normally would say, well, that doesn't really work. I mean, what if this? What if that? Or you know, all sorts of what ifs that, you know. But we just, you know, we did it, and we actually thought to ourselves, well, you know, let's just hack it. You know, we have to find a way to make it possible. And you know, that was really enthusiastic for me to see that when we were there in Indonesia, we basically saw these people like planning like military operations with these drones that we made. And I was like, wow, we you know, we set this in motion and we made this possible. And then, you know, that was only one thing, because then I also realized, well, Greenpeace cannot be the only party that's, you know, struggles with challenges, or, you know, it cannot be the only party that we can help with these kind of pragmatic solutions, which is basically what they are. So, so I talked with several other organizations like UNICEF, War Child, World Wildlife Foundations, like, you know, all these parties that are already in the world, Red Cross, and you know, I just started talking with them, and I soon realized, and this is when I spoke with management of Q42, that there is so much to do, and there's so much that we as engineers can do. And I don't mean to say that we can, you know, program ourselves out of everything. That's not what I mean. But you know, as engineers, as developers, we have a certain mindset, right? We want to fix stuff. We see a problem, we see a challenge, and there's a, you know, how our minds work is like we are solving puzzles, right? What I find is that software developers are very good like puzzle solvers, right? And I really think that that way of thinking is really helpful for all sorts of different challenges that we face. So that's why I came up with the concept of hack the planet. It's really that. It's like getting a challenge and try to hack it, try to make it, you know, try to fix it as soon as possible. I don't know if you've seen the movie Apollo 11, right? Where they have like this problem in outer space where they're, oh no, what is it in outer space? It's actually pretty pretty near Earth. Um, so they have this problem with the oxygen tank, right? And they have to, you know, make something round fit on something rectangular, or something like this. It's like this crazy problem. And eventually, what they come up with was like duct tape, right? So they have to. And it actually happened. There's a movie about it. So that's kind of that. These kinds of solutions. It's not about, you know, coming up with a $200,000 project, and you know, it's like, okay, I have like this box of duct tape and I have like some screws. I mean, what can we do with that? I mean, that kind of mindset. So that brings me to, I get many questions from people every time I talk about, you know, these projects that we do in Africa. And these conservation projects that we do, is that wow? That's people really like it, right? I mean, and we really get a lot of questions about, okay, how can I start with that? How can I do that? And it's literally that. It's starting to think about these global challenges. And I mean, obviously in these last days that you've been at the conference, a lot of stuff came by. And I really think it starts with getting some stuff in your head, and make it itch, make it your problem, basically. Because what I learned is, while poking into these challenges, um, and actually started looking into what's already out there, it oftentimes is not that much. I mean, I don't mean that with any disrespect to all the people that are doing stuff, but there is so much to do. And there is, take for instance the technology in wildlife conservation. So we're now working on these things. So I mean, it's weird, right, that we had to come up with a solution where you can have like a camera trap sending pictures, in this case using a satellite uplink. It just wasn't there, and these people are super happy that we've developed it. But we were some nerds in the Netherlands, and we had to come up with that. So there, oftentimes you think there's already stuff out there, and then sometimes it even looks like it's out there if you start Googling, and then, oh, well, you found this random website. Hey, yeah, it's already there. So, and I always try to encourage people to look further than what's online, or look further than what seems to be out there, and really start investigating. This one time I went to a party that developed an autonomous flying drone, because we were working at that at the time in 2016, and I got an email from someone. I said, "Oh, look, these guys already have what you are trying to develop. They're even on the 8 o'clock news," and they were on the 8 o'clock news. So I contacted them, and I went to the office, and they showed me the drone. It looked amazing. It was like, wow! It's like it's like military grade. It looks like from out of this world, basically. And then I was like, okay, well, can I see it? Can I see it in action? Can you do something with it? I was, no, 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 no. This is just it's just a concept. So they had the plane, and they had the whole story, and they were selling the story as if it was already happening, right? So, not to say that there's nothing going on, because there are many people doing like really cool stuff. So big shout out to the ocean cleaner, for instance. Uh, but just to say that, you know, there needs to be done a lot more. So if you see a hackathon, if you see, something going on where you can contribute to these challenges, I really invite you to do that, because it's really necessary. We need people like you on the job, basically. All right. So one thing I really wanted to share, and I'm sure that it's valid for many global challenges. But this is just not to let you down. Is that, and this is actually, it's a funny story. It's not really dramatic at all. But this is just to show you how complicated things can be. So in terms of conservation, for instance, I'm talking about like wildlife protection, for instance. What I learned by surprise, basically, is that it's like a story within a story within a story within a story. And if you know the Matryoshka dolls, that's basically what it is, right? A doll within a doll within a doll. So, and that was a little bit my feeling when I got working on the whole conservation part. And I give you two examples, because I have more, but we are limited in time. So, for instance, human-elephant conflict, which is a big problem. What is it? It's elephants coming into towns of people living in rural parts of Africa, for instance, and they just mess up everything. They eat the whole livestock. They eat the fruits, etc., etc. So people die in these towns because elephants are, the forest elephants are super aggressive, and the people get angry. So people try to shoot the elephants. The elephants get angry. So there's a lot of stuff going on. So if you start to dig into that problem, what you will find, for instance, is that why are these elephants going into these towns to eat fruits? That's because the trees that normally would grow the fruits don't grow them because of climate change. So from elephants going into towns, you have a link to climate change, right? And for poaching, it's the same situation. You think, well, poaching is super bad. I mean, all poachers need to be caught, need to get into jail. That's what I used to think. Poaching is always bad. But there are two types of poaching, basically. The poacher that's being paid by terrorist organizations and going in with, modern rifles and, for the ivory, or you have this poor family where the father is going into the forest getting what's called bushmeat. So basically, they don't have anything to eat. They go out in the forest and they have to kill an animal. And we're not talking about they're killing an elephant. They're just killing smaller animals. It's still poaching. So these are sometimes these are very complex teams where you dive in and then you find a lot more context. And I find that very, very interesting. We are almost at the end of the presentation. There's just one thing that I wanted to address, is that next to the camera trap that we've been developing against poaching, especially, so we're talking here about ivory poaching, is a sensor, and I have it here. It's a GSM sensor. So what it does, it detects GSM, obviously. But what we learned while we were working in conservation, and again, this is one of these little Matryoshka dolls that we found out, is that if a poacher enters a territory illegal, then he carries a gun, obviously, but he always carries a phone. And the reason for that is that these operations is not that you go into the forest, you shoot an elephant, and you go out. These are like pretty difficult operations. Sometimes it costs several days, and to get out of the territory and to help retrieve the ivory from the area, they need to call their buddies, basically. So they use their phones. So there wasn't anything rangers or eco guards could use to have like an alert if someone would be illegally in the forest. So we figured, how cool would it be that if this ranger or this eco guard, again gets a notification 3 o'clock at night saying, hey, I've just, detected a phone in this area. And then maybe together with this camera trap, he could, you get a better image of what's going on. So then it's a little bit better than finding a needle in a haystack if you know where to look at, right? So I want to end this presentation thanking you for listening to this story. We have many other projects that we do at hacktheplanet.io, so you can just see the conservation project that we do is just one of the projects that is recently, it gets most of our attention currently, but there are other projects that we do as well. So please, take a look at hacktheplanet.io. There's a contact form on there as well. If you find this interesting, or you have ideas, or you want to share something, if you like my presentation, please let me know. If you want to just get in contact as well, let me know. Just drop me a line. There's a contact form there, and I will always reply people that have watched it here on the conference. So again, thank you very much, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the conference and the rest of the day. And during these crazy times in the pandemic, please stay safe, and I hope to see you again sometime. Thank you very much.
Thank you, team. Thank you for a great presentation with matryoshka, jungles, and other very interesting things. I want to invite you to the discussion table. Maybe some of our participants want to ask you something, and it will be a great topic for the discussion. Thanks.